Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to today's CLO webinar. My name is Alec, and as always, I'm here today to help answer any of your general or technical questions that may pop up. But before we get started, I'm going to cover a couple of things you should know about the session today. There is no dial-in number for attendees. All audio will be streamed to you through your computer speakers or headphones. Please adjust your volume there accordingly. If you're hearing me now, obviously you should be good. You can submit questions at any point during the presentation, and we do encourage you to do so. Just go ahead and click on the Q&A icon located on the right-hand side of your screen. Type your question in and click Submit. If it's content related, we may have some time for questions, and we'll pull a couple of attendee questions if we do. And if it's a technical question, I'll have an answer for you that will appear on your screen shortly after you submit. Right now, if you want, you can go ahead and familiarize yourself with the Q&A tool by letting us know where you're joining in from, and we already do have some people doing that. So Richard from Tampa, Pierce from Minneapolis, Anthony from New Jersey, Stacy from Oregon, welcome to all of you. And like I said, if you want, you can go ahead and familiarize yourself with that tool by letting us know where you're joining in from. You can download a PDF to take notes if you'd like by clicking on the handout icon, also located on the right-hand side of your screen. It should be located right beneath the Q&A icon. Today's webinar is being recorded. You're going to receive a link to that recording in a follow-up email about 24 hours after this webinar ends. In that same email, you'll have a link to the slides as well as your HRCI and SHRM certification codes for today's event. Again, all of that information will come 24 hours after this webinar ends. All right, so I'm excited for today's presentation. First things first, I'm going to introduce one of our guests that we have on the line today from Immersion. It's Christina Yu. Christina is a learning partner there at Immersion, a VR for emotional intelligence company that uses human-in-the-loop simulations to deliver experimental learning for essential skills like leadership, communication, and empathy. The technology provides a safe space to make mistakes and learn from failure, and the most common business applications include not only leadership development, but also sales and customer service training, as well as diversity and inclusion initiatives and challenging HR conversations. By using trained professionals who orchestrate the interactions between learners and avatar-based characters, immersion simulations achieve the realism needed to deliver measurable, high-impact results. If you're interested in experiencing a simulation for yourself, please head over to the Immersion site at immersion.com and speak to a live chat representative, or you can email Christina at christina.u@immersion.com. I'm going to go ahead and drop a link to everybody in the Q&A section that is a link to the request a demo section, so you should see that. I'm going to drop it in a couple times here. All right, so that should be appearing for you all. All right, and our other guest today is Melissa Lanier Preston. Melissa is the Director of HR at T-Mobile, responsible for leadership development, talent management, and inclusion learning. Innovation is at the core of the work that her team is doing to transform talent management. Through a grounding in design thinking, her team is rethinking the employee experience to create simple, flexible talent identification approaches, new ways to support agile performance management, and to develop people leaders, alternatives to traditional competency models, and learning experiences that build and overcome bias and build inclusion for leaders at every level. So I'm happy to be joined by both Christina and Melissa. So first things first, I'm going to pass things over to you, Melissa. Let's go ahead and get things started.
Great. Well, and thank you so much for having me and giving me this opportunity to talk a little bit about the Agility Shift, a program that we have been running at T-Mobile now for several years. And I want to share today our journey with the Agility Shift. It is very closely tied to our journey with experiential learning within leadership development at T-Mobile. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why agility as a topic, and why experiential learning, and then talk about how we got to the Agility Shift, what we think made it special and effective, and then the work that we did to understand the business impact of Agility Shift through a success case study, and then finally, what's next for us in terms of experiential learning. So I joined T-Mobile in 2015, and it was already an organization in a great deal of change, right? We had in 2015 2013, I believe John Ledger joined us as CEO, and we started down this path of becoming the uncarrier. Now, it's a little bit old news today, but if you can imagine what the organization was going through at the time, there was a lot of change, right? We were not only shaking up the industry on the outside. To do that, things had to happen quickly and changes had to occur almost seamlessly on the inside of the organization, right? And so the slide that you're looking at right now actually shows uncarrier moves that started in 2013 and went through the end of 2015. These are not even all of them, but I think it paints the picture of the fact that, you know, on a regular basis, people were being asked to do things in a new and different way. And that created a lot of disruption. We have a hashtag at T-Mobile. It's one of the many. We call it hashtag We Won't Stop. But it turns out a life of We Won't Stop is also a life of fatigue for people leaders. And I think the other thing that probably other organizations struggle with also is that in a world of constant disruption, both internal and external, the skills that leaders need really have to shift, right? We are not so much planning for and executing these grand plans that rely heavily on positional power. The way that we have to approach leading organizations and leading teams has to be much more dynamic and agile. And there's a lot of need for connection and influence and honestly, you know, preparation to act if things should shift. And so into that space, we started to think about what was our next most significant need for leadership development. And we considered a lot of options. We actually then went out and did an assessment, and it came back in such clarity to us that this culture of hashtag We Won't Stop really was creating an environment that was complicated, ambiguous, uncertain, all the things that that sort of roll up to that VUCA acronym, and that managers across the organization, people leaders, they were surviving it, but they certainly weren't thriving in it. And so we started to ask ourselves, you know, what can we do to help leaders be more successful in this environment? Because the environment certainly wasn't going to change. The environment was driving a lot of business success for us. So we had some goals for this new program. We wanted to help leaders learn to respond quickly. And we wanted to help them do that by leveraging connections, right? That we understood that leaders who were most successful in this environment were those who could reach outside of their day-to-day and pull people together, people cross-functionally when needed. We wanted to increase resilience in the face of ongoing change. We wanted to reduce cost through using resources in new and creative ways, eliminating inefficiencies and looking at ways to better align activities to company goals, right? Because when you've got a lot going on, you want to make sure you're focused. And then finally, we wanted to help leaders figure out new ways to increase their ability to iterate and to implement change. So this is a big punch list, right? There's a lot of things on this slide, and we know that many of the things on this list are fairly complex soft skills, right? It's not the same. It's in many ways, it's much easier to teach someone to read a P&L than it is to increase their resilience. So we also started to look at what are the learning approaches that could most effectively help leaders to master these complex soft skills in a workshop environment. So that led us to the agility shift, and a great partnership with the author and researcher Pamela Meyer. This certainly was not the first book that we looked at on agility. We actually we checked the marketplace first for existing courses. We didn't find one that met our needs. And then the team and I evaluated 13 different books on different approaches to thinking about agility within organizations, within people, and the way that Dr. Meyer approached agility in Agility Shift and the focus on effective leaders really resonated for us at T-Mobile. The other thing that we really appreciated about the approach that Dr. Meyer had taken, at least in her work with agility, was trying to create a really experiential learning environment for adult learners to help them actually experience the discomfort of change, the discomfort of disruption, and then to figure out ways to cope with that and debrief it in the moment. And so it was definitely a big plunge into experiential learning for the whole team. So we partnered with Dr. Meyer. We also partnered with another really outstanding group, Coyne Harlan Consulting, who worked with Pamela to actually create the design and all of the fabulous materials for Agility Shift. Now, when you think about what might work or maybe what might not work in a session on agility, right? Imagine coming to a class on agility, sitting in your chair and looking at slides for 2 days. And of course, that seemed like the route to certain failure. So we did a couple of things that were very different with Agility Shift. You're looking at one of them. The first is there are no slides. So the facilitators do an amazing job, our leadership facilitators, of using two very large, really they're maps on the wall that walk you through the flow of the course. They show you the agile mindset, which is where you start. They talk about the relational web, which is an underpinning of Pamela's model, and you have people, resources, all sorts of things, technologies in your relational web, and they help you to execute these 5 dynamics, right? Which are relevant, responsive, resilient, resourceful, and reflective. So no slides. The participants get up, they walk around, and when needed, they stand around one of these 2 maps in the room, and the facilitators talk to them about whatever section they're focused on. The other thing that happens in Agility Shift is there is a lot of improv, right? So it is very experiential. We do a lot of things in the course to ask people to be uncomfortable. In fact, the very first activity when they arrive in the class involves getting in a circle and passing around a number of things as fast as they can, including a rubber chicken and what they believe to be a raw egg, right? And so there's discomfort right out of the gate, and they do numerous experiential activities based in improv, some that people are probably very familiar with, like yes and building on another person's story, and some that may be less familiar, like how many things can you do with a paper clip. There's also an activity where they have to iterate very quickly with paper airplanes. They are up and about and experiencing through this whole 2-day session. It's super important for our audience of people managers. If you think about the fact that many of our 6,500 people managers are in a T-Mobile retail store, they are on their feet. They do not like to sit at a desk. And so the experiential learning where people are up and moving has been very well received. The other thing that I think is important to understand about going down the path of this kind of learning is that it really needs reflection, right? And so we spend a lot of time asking people to do things, asking them to be uncomfortable, and then pausing and understanding their own experience through that discomfort and what they can learn from it and how they can apply it. I would say the other thing that has gotten really great feedback in this class is an activity where they have to plan. So we talk in Agility Shift a lot about the shift from planning to prepare, I'm sorry, from planning to preparing. And so typically many leaders plan, right? And we have all seen those big, but now somewhat old-fashioned waterfall project plans. We've seen lots of large, complex financial plans. We start to introduce the idea that one of the things that you need to do as a leader is prepare and help your team to prepare and to start to think through multiple scenarios and what ifs. What would you do if this or that? And in the class, they have a really fun activity where they prepare for the zombie apocalypse. And so they're broken up into groups and they each get assigned a T-Mobile location. And as the activity progresses, things shift, right? We hand out cards. All of a sudden, your situation has gone from bad to worse, or you've found some new resources. How are you going to use them? And so it really drives home the lesson of what if planning in a way that has been both fun and effective. So Agility Shift is well loved at this point at T-Mobile, right? We also call it Manager Mastery too. It actually followed a very popular course that was called Manager Mastery. So for us internally, it's Manager Mastery 2, the Agility Shift. We are a highly social organization, lots of folks on social media. If any of you all are familiar with our CEO, John Ledger, he is on social media very frequently. And so we get a lot of feedback about how things are going in the classroom from Twitter. And so this is just a few of the tweets that have been gathered over time. There are literally hundreds of them. And you do see when people talk about their experience in manager mastery, this idea of being able to respond effectively and not react comes out in many of the tweets. We also do provide participants with a Take It to the Team kit. That was an important part of the strategy with this class, is that as leaders go through the class, they learn the activities that they can then use to take back to their team. So they leave with a 6-month plan and a full set of materials to take their team members through Agility Shift. And, so we got all this amazing feedback. I actually have to say, we do a quarterly KPI report where we roll up numbers around how many participants would recommend the course, what percentage of participants feel like they would recommend, apply, and are committed to using. And the first time I saw the numbers from Agility Shift, I thought they were placeholder data because they were 99%, 100%, and 100%, right? They kept on in about that vein. We realized we were doing something that was certainly pretty popular with our people leaders. And after about 2 years in, we thought, well, you know what, we probably need to start to understand the business impact of Agility Shift, right? Because we had provided it to, I think at this point, we're on 6,413 people leaders have been through Agility Shift. We started this success case, I think, about approximately 1,500 leaders ago. So we had been down the path of a lot of Agility Shift. We wanted to know if it was worthwhile to continue to invest in it. And besides doing something that learners clearly enjoyed, what was the impact? And so we decided to do a Brinkerhoff success case. Now, this is not a full ROI study for those of you all who are interested in learning evaluation. I mean, I certainly am. I have gone down the path of ROI studies in the past. With this kind of complex soft skills learning, we really felt like the Brinkerhoff approach was the best way for us to get a feel for how effective was it, and what could we do to either make a decision to stop or to continue to improve it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the structure of the study, just because I'm not sure that everyone has had an opportunity to do one. You start a study with an understanding of what are you trying to answer, right? And what were the goals? And so I showed you the goals earlier. The questions were are on the screen. Personal benefits that Agility Shift may have provided to individuals, business impact for T-Mobile, if it is working, why, and what, if anything, can be done to improve the business impact. This is the evaluation process that we then used, actually in partnership with Tim Mooney at BTS, to understand the answers to the questions. So in April of 2018, we distributed a survey to 682 folks who had gone through Agility Shift. And you can see there that we got 178 participants who responded, so 26%, which was more than enough to continue with the process. After we get the survey data back, we randomly select participants for in-depth interviews. So 18 in-depth interviews were completed, and they try to look at both high impact and little to no impact to see what that information might share with us. We then go through, sort of parse through all the data from the various sources and create a report. And so what you're looking at is the report. And since we don't often have the opportunity to do this sort of evaluation, I thought it would be interesting to share what this success case looks like, as well as the information that we received back about the Agility Shift and our foray into experiential learning. So we'll start with the conclusions, right? That the Agility Shift participants valued the experience and that they are incorporating the concepts and the mindset into their day-to-day activities. This was not a surprise. We knew that people really liked it. And what was great was some of the context that we got from the interviews, because you could really see people pulling the language from the learning experience into the way that they talked about agility and change. Second conclusion, that the things that made Agility Shift a valuable learning experience, right? So this was some new information for us, that it was relevant. Call out to our absolutely excellent leadership facilitators. The facilitators were excellent. And you know, in a class without slides, the facilitators really are on the hook to deliver the experience, and they had to be comfortable being uncomfortable, because they had to go first in all of those improv activities that were definitely out of their comfort zone out of the gate. Introducing the idea of the relational web and helping people to think through their network and their resources, look for gaps and plan to fill them, apparently generated huge value for participants. The idea of respond rather than react, to be more purposeful and strategic. And then a common language, to talk about this kind of change, to create strategies, to set expectations. So that was really helpful for us, right? We knew people liked it, but why? What were they getting out of it? So this again goes to the survey data. This was different survey data than I quoted before. We do a regular ongoing survey to everyone who participates. That's where the 99, 100, and 100 were coming from. But this was right in line with that, right? 99% again said it was a valuable learning experience and they were applying. And then 78% reported that they had produced significant and tangible business results by applying what they learned in Agility Shift. And you can see with this comment on the right, there is a participant who was talking about the fact that you had to go outside of your comfort zone to find a resolution, that sometimes remaining in your comfort zone keeps you from being able to get the job done. So definitely a win there, that these concepts are really resonating with the participants. And these quotes came months after the class. This was, these were folks who had taken the class in the past year and were responding to the survey. This was not the 30-day after follow-up. So the conclusion number 4, that participants were in fact producing business impact. And I have some great examples of that coming up, right? They were using their relational web, seeing things from new perspectives, being less reactive, fostering a culture of agility. Specifically with our store managers, they were connecting better with their employees, and account managers were able to work more collaboratively with their customers. So huge win there. And then some factors that were limiting the potential impact. So only 24% of folks who were coming into the class arrived with any expectation of how they could or should apply these concepts back on the job. And then coaching is inconsistent, right? So those were 2 really good ahas for us that we can take back to continuing to offer agility shift. So again, this is the high-level survey results. And now I'm going to dig in a little bit to the data. I promise I'm not going to really make you dive too well into these little slides. But I think, again, if you haven't done a success case, it might be interesting to see the kind of data that you get back. So this is a question about what characterizes your experience, and asks folks if they've learned something new or if they were reminded of what they already knew, but still it was valuable because they learned to apply it in new ways. That's where that 78% came from. And then this slide was really interesting because this goes through the actual learning objectives, or the summarized learning objectives from the course, and asks participants if they both implemented and got positive results, or implemented and they're unsure of their results, if they haven't implemented but planned to, or if they were already doing it. And so being able to see the impact by learning objective was very useful to the team, right? Because I think it also gives us a guidepost to say, wow, okay, responding more quickly to change, people really walked away with that, and they've tried it, and they have seen positive results. Carving out time to learn continuously, and engaging in more testing cycles and iterating as we do continued follow-on activities, that's probably a place where we could focus. So that the study was very helpful from this perspective. So I told you I would share a little bit about the business impact stories we found. Because this isn't an ROI study, we do not roll up a big number and say, hey, we spent XYZ on agility shift and T-Mobile got back ABC. That's not how the success case works. Instead, we start to talk about impact profiles, right? And I know there's a lot of words on this slide. It really is the full report, and wanted to give you all a chance to see it. These are stories from those folks that were randomly selected and interviewed. And so this first one was a retail store manager who worked at an underperforming store, and with some folks who were struggling. When you look at, so first block, what was learned, then how it was applied, and then the results, right? So when you look at impact profile number 1, the good news story here, this was a store that was underperforming, and this leader, through using the concepts learned in the class, has self-reported that they have applied those concepts to become a top 100 store, and that is a verifiable fact. They had in fact become a top 100 store, and so this really gives us some insight into how folks are taking their learning back and using it on the job. The next profile is about a group that came from marketing. So a leader who came from marketing and chose to focus on being less reactive and taking more meaningful action. They also embraced the concept of the 5 whys. So this is something that's taught in the course. We ask them to think about the 5 whys to get to the rationale behind a decision so that they can share that with their teams and help connect them to the bigger picture. This leader also switched from yes, but to yes, and. Super simple thing that is taught in the course that really has been life changing, I think, for some people. We hear, oh my gosh, I was a yes, butter, and I've learned that I need to be a yes, ander. And so we have one of those folks who has embraced yes, and. And you'll see that in the results created section, this leader was responsible for a launch, and they said that similar launches had achieved 18% of orders to the digital channel, and this launch achieved 32%. And so, this was an awesome success that this particular leader attributed to their experience in Agility Shift. Third impact profile, a leader who was already personally on a mindfulness journey. This leader really connected to the mindset for change, positive mindset that we talk about in Agility Shift. And then also looking at situations from other people's perspectives. And so in this case, the leader was working with a weak performer and helped that person to make a transformational change, right? And so within our call centers, when folks are really successful, they do receive a monthly bonus. And so in this case, this particular expert had received a bonus of 5 months in a row, when in fact previously performance had been a real struggle. So again, another tangible example of results and how they were applied. Success profile number 4, for those of you who are interested in the dollars, we start to see a little more in dollars here in terms of how things are being collected. So national account manager, and took away from Agility Shift the desire to get a new insight into what customers were thinking and feeling and how to build stronger relationships with them, and then leverage those stronger relationships to navigate the constant change, right? And so in this case, because of the better relationship and the more strategic relationship, they were able to agree to accelerated payment terms from 29 days to 24 days, increasing our cash flow, a very important metric for us at T-Mobile. Last but not least, this is the 5th one, and the last. This is a one that actually has some dollars and cents truly attached to it. A marketing manager who used Agility Shift to deal with the constant shifting within marketing, right? I showed you that slide at the beginning. All of those uncarrier moves had a huge marketing component to them. And the marketing team really had to be agile, and I think had to learn to be healthy and be resilient in the face of the ongoing need to be agile. So in this case, one project alone saved T-Mobile $20,000 to $25,000. Now, interestingly, and this is one of the things that I love about the success case method, right? The participant also reported that they read a book about the art of agile marketing, and that also helped them to make the mindset shift. So this is amazing because this participant left and continued their learning about agility and applied it directly to marketing. So really some great information about how Agility Shift is affecting T-Mobile. So we get to the recommendations, and we were really grateful that the program, because this was done, by a third party. So the recommendations: continue agility shift. We thought that would be the case, but when you're having someone else come and check your work, it's always nice to see that they agree. Do more to set expectations in advance. Yes, this came through loud and clear, right? Folks are showing up in the classroom, 75% of them, and they're happy to be there, but they don't really necessarily know why, or more importantly, how they should be thinking about applying what they learn when they get back to the job. So think about how we can continue to support and reinforce the concepts through things like ongoing sustainment activities, peer coaching, that sort of thing. Potentially make agility shift available to more levels. Today it is for people leaders. We have not offered it at scale to individual contributors, and we are evaluating that as an option. And also to set a firm expectation and provide tools and support to make the agility, to make spreading agility shift concepts easy and effective. So, T-Mobile is a non-mandate culture, and so I think it's even more interesting to know that within our non-mandate culture, where no one was required to take agility shift or to share the tools with their team, we had more than 6,000 folks. We've had them go through agility shift and take those tools back. And so this recommendation is really about tightening the expectation, saying, no, it's no longer completely optional. We really need you to do it. So this really connected us to the idea that experiential learning was good for our manager population, was good for our organization, right? I think a lot of times as learning professionals, you're out in the world, we're reading about all the things that are coming, the trends for, we did this success case in 2018. So we would have been thinking about trends in what's coming in 2019. Now we're thinking about what's coming in 2020. We do a lot of things that are digital, that are social and mobile, and we're working on creating this idea of a learner ecosystem where the learner is in the center, right? But a lot of times I think you think about and pursue trends without really understanding how they're going to work for you. And based on our experience with Agility Shift, we thought, well, we have a pretty good grounding now in the idea that experiential learning works well for us. So what's next? And for us, what's next is leveraging the authentic simulation to help our leaders to have real life experience, having difficult or sensitive conversations that have a component of diversity or inclusion. And so what you're looking at right now are two of our T-Mobile branded avatars. We pretty much fell in love with this idea at the Brandon Hall Awards. We were there because a couple of programs did win awards, and we were excitedly checking out all the things that might be coming. And I have to tell you, the immersion folks were doing a demo of this technology, and we were dumbstruck. Like, how did they solve every problem we've ever seen with automated simulations? Well, and when you talk with them for a few minutes, you find out that no, they've solved it because there's an actor in the behind the scenes interacting with the person through your computer. And so we brought this back and we've tested it, and the feedback has just been phenomenal. I would say we've had at least 30 folks go through a pilot session now of what we will be rolling out next year related to diversity and inclusion, and probably a demo of at least 150 to 200 folks, including the whole HR director and above leadership team. And the response is just amazing. And for the person going through the simulation, and I've done a few of them myself, it is so real. And so you are getting to practice and have the experience in a real environment. You can fail in a way that's very safe, or be successful in a way that's very safe. We're going to be using it in a fishbowl, so they'll be at a group with 4, and they'll do 4 simulations, and so they'll get to see their peers do different simulations. So I think there'll be a very nice element of learning from each other also. And I actually was just at a test session yesterday and got to see again the way that the people managers light up when they do this. So we are super excited for this next phase in our journey of experiential learning here at T-Mobile, and we're very happy with the partnership that we have struck so far with Mersion. And in fact, I think it's important that that none of us do this work alone. We leverage partners all the time. I started off by talking about the great partners for Agility Shift, and we're looking forward to continuing that going forward. So I think with that, I've walked you through all of my prepared materials. If there are questions, I'm happy to answer some. Oh, yes, I should actually, before we answer the questions, I will tell you, because I know you guys are all going to get the slides. Within the appendix, there's a few other data slides that I wasn't going to talk you through, but you'll see when they're there, some of the data around expectations coming in, follow-up, and whether or not folks had used the Take It to the Team toolkit, which is what we call the 6-month sustainment plan. Okay.
I can jump in here, Melissa, if you want to take a couple questions here. I had a couple come in from Richard. Richard's first question is, how long did your agility shift take at T-Mobile to go from introduction of the process to seeing the tangible results of your business?
Oh, that's a great question. So, we started to hear anecdotal results within the first, I would say, 2 to 3 months of starting classes. That in a way that was unusual for us, leaders would have a person or two go and then call our managers, either call the facilitation manager or call me and say, oh my gosh, I just sent someone to this class, and I need you to come to my call center and do every single manager. So we launched in January of 2017, and I would say by March, we were sensing that, yes, people were learning and actually doing. And then by April of 2018, we had decided to do the impact study. And so that's what you're seeing the data from, right? It took a while to actually work through the process internally to do the study. But between that time, between January of 17 and April of 2018, we decided that we had seen enough evidence of results that we wanted to invest in the study.
All right, perfect. I'm going to combine these two questions here because they're both very similar, from Selena and Carol. What was the specific process you used to select the facilitators, and were the facilitators from your company?
Okay. Yes. So the facilitators were internal facilitators, yes. And we have a team of leadership facilitators. So I think at the time there may have been 7 leadership facilitators and facilitation managers. They did the heavy lifting of rolling out Agility Shift. They are sometimes supplemented with folks on stretch assignment. I think for Agility Shift, really the key thing there was preparation for the facilitators, because it was so different. Right? These are folks on our leadership facilitation team who are just excellent in their own right. However, this was a very different kind of facilitation, and so it required a lot of dialogue. One of the things that was really different about Agility Shift is we don't tell people what they're supposed to learn. Right? So there's never a moment where you put up a slide and say, here's the things you're going to get out of this class. Here are the learning objectives. behaviors. And there also is not a moment where you tell people what they should have learned as part of a recap. The idea within the experiential learning is that they are having the experience and processing for themselves and sharing. And so getting our facilitation team ready to work in that way required preparation. Our collaborator and author Pamela Meyer came and participated in a train the trainer. We did a lot of work with her even as we were starting to implement, so she was available to answer questions and that sort of thing to help folks become both subject matter experts and really good at this new kind of facilitation. And it took just a little bit, and they were up and running. And like I said, the feedback that we have gotten on their facilitation is really amazing.
All right, perfect. We're going to move to this one that just came in from Vanessa. How has T-Mobile aligned the agility shift holistically with organizational performance or strategic planning?
So when you think about agility and where we were when we started the agility shift, it's funny because our competency model was from 2012, right? We hadn't updated the competency model at that point since before John Ledger started, since before any of those uncarrier moves that I showed you, like on my very first slide. So the competency model did not reflect the need for agility. We use an agile conversation-based performance management process. Folks do reference the competency model to some extent. But we have a very open-ended, not particularly data-driven performance management process. So what has happened though is in this year, 2019, we have decided to update our, it's not really a competency model anymore. We could call it a leadership framework. And agility is now part of that framework, right? That when we started to have the visionary interviews with our SLT and take those interviews down through leadership, the idea that people needed agility and they wanted behaviors associated with agility to be within our model was evident. And in just the great partnership that we've had with Pamela, we actually got some very foundational things on agility from SHL, because they were the partner in doing the research on the behaviors for the competency model. And she worked with them to really make them fit hand in glove to what is in agility shift. And so there's now going to be a wonderful reinforcement of what folks learn in agility shift. I would say that we have not created that sort of close tie with our strategic planning process at this point.
Okay. This next one I have in here comes from Jocelyn. Jocelyn's question is, what markers were used to assess the learner's readiness? If somebody didn't seem to be ready, what were some of the next steps for them?
So in terms of their readiness, I got to think about this one for a minute, because the course is open to all people managers, right? So there's no entry requirements. We don't say, gosh, you're not yet ready to go to agility shift. And in fact, for a lot of folks who are in our more frontline groups, they have a roadmap, and agility shift sits in their first 6 or 12 months as a people leader roadmap. Now, this doesn't mean that a particular leader might not say, hey, I don't think you're ready for that. You still need to be focused on the day-to-day, because I do think that could happen. But we are not, from a centralized point, trying to assess if folks are ready or not ready to come into agility shift. And I think based on the survey results, the study results, we wouldn't do that even going forward. What I think we want to do is spend more time helping the people managers set expectations with those participants. So the second level managers, helping them to make sure that people managers are ready when they come in and they know how to apply. At the same time, we don't have a post test or a way that says, gosh, you didn't get it, now you need you need to go back through again, or you need remedial help. Again, we are a very non-compliance culture, and so people go through the learning experience and we get the feedback. And this is one of the reasons why the study was important to us, because we really wanted to understand what was being used. But that has not been drilled down to an individual level in terms of their readiness after the class to use what they've learned.
All right. Thank you, Melissa. We still have a little bit of time here, and the questions are really, really rolling in here. So I'm just trying to keep up with them. But this one here I see from Richard, and the question is kind of a version of a question we get all the time on these, and it's about getting the buy-in from upper management. So was selling the agility shift to those controlling the money a difficult sale? And if you would, how did you end up selling it to the top management?
So I would say that probably the class that came before Agility Shift was the harder sale, right? And to understand this, you might need to understand a little bit about the history of T-Mobile. So before I started, so I'm going to tell you a story I wasn't there to experience. Before I started at T-Mobile, there was a time when T-Mobile was almost acquired. And in that time, the investment in things like leadership development was cut way, way back. And the acquisition did not go through, and the company started to be more forward looking, right? We're going to remain a standalone company, and so gosh, we need to start to develop these folks. And so I would say the first class, what was manager mastery, probably had the harder road in terms of laying a foundation to say, gosh, we would like an investment, we'd like to build a team around restarting manager development. I can tell you in my time at T-Mobile, now almost 5 years, there is such a willingness to invest in people and to invest in leaders. Our senior leadership really believes in our employee base, and they believe in helping leaders to grow their careers. So I think what we had to do in moving into what was called at the time Manager Mastery 2, before that we knew it was Agility Shift, was leverage the success of the first program and start to talk about how we were going to build on that. And once we started to socialize the idea that it was going to be focused on Agility Shift and helping leaders deal with change, it was so connected to a business need that it became easy, right? And I think that is probably my most significant advice to folks who are trying to develop stakeholder support for an idea or an offering, that when you really can speak to leaders in the language of what they're struggling with, it and offer a solution, then it becomes a very different conversation, because you've come with something that they want. And trust me, I've been on both sides of that. Something I thought they wanted and something they really wanted, and it's much easier when they really want it.
Okay. We have time for one or two more. This one I'm going to give you from Michelle. The question is, was the program open enrollment, or did you have to cascade the program in a certain order?
The program was open enrollment. We try to avoid structured cascades wherever we can because it is so complex. So these were sessions that were scheduled and offered, and then if leaders requested, like, hey, come to my call center, do all my managers, we tried to accommodate that where we could within the open enrollment structure. We would try to take a class and shift it, or add a class if we could.
All right. Yep, we got time for one more here, and this is going to come from Carly Ann. I apologize if I mispronounced your name there. But the question is, was there any pushback regarding the commitment of time for the training? I thought I heard 2 days, maybe not. And if so, how was that pushback addressed?
So it is 2 days. And I have never launched a 2-day program without having to address, why is it so long? And of course, I'm happy to make them shorter when the learning can be accommodated in the shorter amount of time. I think that the way that I always try to address it is through testing and feedback, right? And we're trying this even now with programs that we've done up to this point and going forward. We find that when folks from the business units come and attend the programs, when the leaders come, when the HR folks who are supporting that business leader come, when they come and they can give feedback and they can see the value of the learning, um, and understand why it's taking the amount of time that it's taking, whatever that is, I think that helps tremendously, because then you have advocates who are not just speaking from the learning and development group, right? They're folks who are coming from, retail leaders who can go back and say, gosh, yes, it's 2 days and I know that's a lot, but I really think it's going to help us. So I always try to test, get folks from the business in and have them help us spread the word about what's good, what needs to be updated, how can we make it better. Um, we also did with both Manager Mastery 1 and Agility Shift something that we call the taste test, where we walk more senior leaders like our EVPs through the learning experience, help them see the big picture and understand, again, it's not just the sticker shock of, oh my gosh, what is 2 days out of the business going to cost me? It's what are they really learning? How do we think they're going to apply it? How do we think that connects to the business needs and the business value? And it never hurts to have your first, 3 months of people come out and say, oh my gosh, it was amazing. More people have to go, right? Because I think if that didn't happen, if it was 2 days and the word on the non-compliance driven T-Mobile street was, I don't know that I got that much out of it, people just wouldn't have come.
All right, yeah, that's a really good point. That is going to be all the time we have for questions, Melissa. So thank you for taking the time to not only present, but to answer some of our attendees' questions. We really appreciate you taking the time to be here. And I also want to thank the sponsors of today at Immersion. It's always a pleasure to work with the folks there. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drop this link one more time out to everybody. You can head to Immersion to sign up for a demo. And I'm going to drop that link again. It should be appearing for you all right now one more time. So thanks again to Immersion for sponsoring today's event. Like I said, always a pleasure to work with the folks there. All right, again, thanks, Melissa. Thanks to Immersion. We'll see you all back here for our next CLO webinar, which will actually be tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on Wednesday, December 4th. And the title is Data Science for Business Leaders. So thanks again, everybody, and have a great day.